Homelessness 2.0, I want to say day 73. Really. Time is meaningless anyway, but nevertheless, it's been almost a full week now since I felt the tickle in the back of my throat. It's last Thursday. Today's Wednesday of the following week. I honestly don't know where I'm at in all of this with regards to what the end of the tunnel looks like, because I've never dealt with this. It's like I said before in the other video that is titled "COVID is here to stay." It's here to stay. Thanks to everybody who downplayed it, said it was a hoax, said it wasn't real. What I find funny is a lot of the same people, and not necessarily precisely the same people, but a lot of the same people who were in that camp. They're now trying to strong arm mostly just Dr. Fauci, which is interesting because it's if it's why is it just him somehow? Somehow he's the only one that's in on the so-called gain of function lab leak. The gain of function research is pretty typical, but what a lot of people don't understand, and I mean this is still way out of my wheelhouse of understanding. I took a human genetics course and I got a low C in it because as much as I tried to understand it, there's a lot to it. But it seems as though that the people who are trying to do this, trying to discredit him, trying to have him in some way or another, I guess I don't know, get him to say that it's a leak or something. I don't know. I don't honestly know what their plan is, what their intent is. They're using him as a scapegoat for the incompetence of our previous president and his administration and everybody else who just perpetually spread lies about the whole situation. But now they've shifted gears and said, okay, instead of saying that it's a hoax, instead of saying that it's not that bad, somehow it's okay, well, I guess evidently it must be that bad because we've got to focus on these other things, on this lab leak theory. It's people talk about flip-flops in the world of politics. And this is one of those things that's seemingly just is going under the radar. I don't know. I mean, obviously you're not going to criticize your own camp. Well, you will if you are a critical thinker. If you are not somebody who's trying to find some if you will, explanation. And I use that tone as to kind of criticize the whole woo-woo idea of so many things. This weird, this idea that somehow there are these ultra-powerful, ultra-influential organizations that they can't seem to get their shit together, for one. They can't seem to actually do the job that people claim that they do. Oh, well, they're just hiding this or whatever. It's well, where's the information that you have that proves that claim? Where's the information that you have that proves that the Illuminati is what you say it is? Not some YouTube video talking about what they're trying to hide. But like actual evidence, and that's the thing. Almost all of those types of videos or comments or blog posts or whatever that talk about that type of stuff, it's not about what's actually visible. It's not proof of something. It is proof of a lack of something. It's coincidence, but there's no real evidence. There's no causal link. It's always, okay, well, if you look at this thing, all right, and then if you think about it this way, and then if you do a this, that kind of thought, whatever, then you'll come to the same conclusion that this rando on the internet has come to. And it's like, but I don't want to come to a conclusion. I don't want a conclusion given to me. I want the information provided that allows that conclusion. I want your conclusion, for one. Like, if you're coming to conclusions, I want your actual conclusion. B, I want information. That doesn't just reinforce your conclusion, but potentially also contradicts it. You're like, why would you do that though? Why would you give somebody information that might contradict it? Because that's what information does. I have never seen, like, I've browsed the various sources that people put out there that talk about the gain of function and lab research, the lab leak theory and all that stuff. And what I have not seen is anything that really demonstrates not only credibility, but credibility in the sense that through said perceived credibility, that one could conclude, oh, there might actually be something here. It's usually some sort of clickbaity title that then goes in to effectively reinforce that clickbaity title. And then somebody somewhere says, we can't rule it out. And that's about it. There's nothing else. I did that wrong. Saying we can't rule it out does not mean that the thing that we want to, it just means that they're going to look further into it. It doesn't mean that there's some sort of smoking gun or anything. And that's what you kind of want. You want a smoking gun. You don't want somebody to be like, oh, shit, fuck. That was on there way too long, too. At least on the inside. But anyway, and I'm saying this as somebody who used to spend a lot of time looking at things like astrology, and then when I first started really paying attention to Lady Gaga, there was almost every single time I went to one of her videos or a conversation about her or something, there was always something about how she was a part of the Illuminati or whatever. And so I would dive into that stuff. But Not because I thought she was part of the Illuminati, but because I didn't. I didn't think she was part of the Illuminati. Because I didn't think that what people were saying made any sense. And every time somebody brought it up, I would look into it further. Because the way that I approach information like that is I want to see, A, if there's anything new, and B, if there's actual information. What I found throughout my years, not only of Lady Gaga, but other artists that I found myself, gravitating towards, whatnot, or anything else with regards to the occult and Illuminati or anything of that nature, I never found those two things. I never found new information, and I never found facts, info that was causal, where things had a cause and effect relationship to then allow a person to come to that conclusion. Those things I have never found. Which kind of boggles my mind. How come there's no new information 10 years later? It's always the same accusations. It's always the same supposed symbolism. It's always the same response, if you will, of they don't want you to know, or that's what they want you to think. Phrasing. Well, one of the things that I've noticed when I go over to the conservative side of Reddit, for instance, and I know Reddit isn't the only place, but it's a big place. It has a lot of brains attached to it, and so it's a good sampling ground. Is it the best? No, because I'm not a fucking scientist. I'm not going to go through the rigor. And there's an actual term called rigor, if you want to look into that. I'm not going to explain it, because I don't like doing the rigor. But, trying to figure out which one it was. Okay. So, this side. So, what I have found in this little world is that sensationalism is the go-to. It's the MO. Almost every headline of any kind is sensationalized to a point where, the whole point of sensationalist headlines is to get you to click on it. It's clickbait. But it's clickbait in the sense of it's obviously there to get your emotions stirred. That's the whole point of it. I'm going to turn on the heater. Turn on the heater, man. I'm not feeling as bad as I was the first couple of nights. I don't feel like I have to cook it out of me. Pretty sure I had a fever too, first night. But I've never had to deal with something this long. The cold, I'll usually have something like this, but it feels like it's going away. And today, still didn't, like, I feel like it might be going away, but I'm really not sure. But what I've found is that, one, the damn websites themselves are often, like, sensationalist just in the titles. But then the titles of the articles, because I don't really want to call them news, are regularly sensationalist. And then, something that I feel that's a little bit more insidious too, is there will be an article that starts off seemingly very informative, in fact. There was this article about some dude who was supposedly at the insurrection at the Capitol. And for like the first 4 or 5 paragraphs, it seemed like really good news reporting. Like, it seemed very fact-oriented. There didn't seem to be a lot of loaded language. It didn't seem to try to rile up your information. And that's what loaded language is. You know, it's sensationalist, it's clickbaity. It didn't seem to have that going on. But then it took an almost hard turn. And it started going into conspiracy theory territory. Where it was like, but now this person doesn't exist anymore. What they're claiming is that there was this person that was at the rally that now there's the FBI has scrubbed all information of them. And it's like, well, who is this person? What are they about? Why is the FBI doing this? Blah, blah, blah. And so they're just asking questions, but they're not really asking questions because they don't want an answer. They think they have the answer. And so the article continues on in this fashion. And it's like, what the fuck? That's not what you're supposed to do when you're reporting on information. You're not supposed to start coming up with fucking conclusions. And a non-savvy reader is going to get into it, and then they're just going to fall right into whatever's being said. And they wrote it, I'll admit it, and I hate saying it this way, but it's well written in that regard. If you want to convince somebody to think a certain way, to pivot in a certain logical way to then go into this line of thinking, that article is case number 1. It's conspiracy writing 101. And one might dismiss me and be like, well, who the fuck are you to claim otherwise, to think that you know better, that you're somehow better at this. I'm going to use an analogy from Steve Hofstetter. I don't know how to fly a helicopter. I've never been in a helicopter. I'd like to try it at least once, but the thought of it scares me. But if I see a helicopter in a tree, I'd be like, dude fucked up. Just because I'm not a writer doesn't mean I can't see it. Doesn't mean I can't understand it. And I could probably write an article if I wanted to. I wouldn't be able to do it to professional journalism standards, but I could if I felt like going that route. I'm not the best at words. If you want good words, date a languager. But I'm intelligent enough to see the pattern, to see the switch. And because They almost fooled me. Because I was reading this, I was like, this is really fascinating, this is really interesting information. But then I saw the conclusion that they were providing. Now, they weren't writing it out like it was a conclusion, but I saw where it was going. It was pretty plain as day though, but it wasn't written plain as day. It wasn't written as the FBI is behind the insurrection. It was, this is the case they're trying to build. And you know, it's really easy to do that when that's your mentality. See, any good story knows how it's going to end. That's writing 101 of any kind. Any good story knows how it's going to end. So if you're going into something with confirmation bias, knowing that the insurrection was started, that's the funny part too. It's like, is it really an insurrection if the FBI did it? Like, there's so many logical fallacies. There's so many plot holes. It's like, was it actually an insurrection? Or was it something else? Well, if it was the FBI, then what the fuck really was it then? You know, that's one of the things that they'll start trying to, they'll have a hard time answering. It's like, okay, well, what's the severity of this issue then? Like, what exactly was it if it was the FBI? But then, was it that bad? Or what was it then? And that's the thing. It's like, there's so many questions of, well, why did the FBI this, that, and the other? There's too many people that are involved in what happened on January 6th for it to be just some everyday conspiracy. I mean, they fucking had t-shirts made. T-shirts don't happen lickety fucking split. They don't. And there's untold numbers of different styles of t-shirts. And I don't mean they just had t-shirts that were somehow vague. No, they were specific to the date of people across the U.S. with different styles, different words. A lot of them had literally just the date on it. But when you have that many people from that many parts of the U.S. who are wearing t-shirts that are made to be worn that day, that means there's pre-planning. Now, some would say, that's what I'm talking about. Look at all of those people that were working together. Who said they were working together? Just because you work towards this same goal doesn't mean you're working together. I mean, look at any college classroom, any big business. Just because they're working towards the same goal doesn't mean they're working together. Sorry. It's not a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy theory. And it's crackpot. The reality is that before the election even happened, 45 wanted, he and his cronies were spreading doubt across the whole thing before the election, months and months and months before. I was alive, I was there, I was watching, I was pissed off at it because I knew what was going to happen. They were spreading doubt in the confidence of the election itself. Make sure this thing is still recording.